welcome back to Beyond the Silence podcast, and I am your host, Lisa Toma. So today we have a very special guest, and I know that I always say that, but this guest is honestly so special to me. This guest was a huge, huge part and catalyst to my healing journey, and I am so honored to have him here today. Joe Trimboli from the Wake Up Call. Joe, thank you so much for being here today. I'm truly honored to have you here, like I said, because you were such a huge part in my journey. But before we go there, I want to kind of tell the listeners and the viewers who you are, what the wake up call is, how it started, so we can kind of give everyone a little bit of an introduction on how I ended up on the call after, which obviously I'll do that part. But yeah, so welcome to Beyond the Silence podcast.
Thank you, Lisa. And you're very special to me too.
Thank you.
I think I'll start by saying when you can't do the things that you know you should be doing and you see other people doing it and inspiring people and living it, it reminds you of how to navigate and get back. So for me, it started with just that. I was struggling. I was playing the victim like a lot of people do. I saw the world through a filter that was just all bad, negative. I hated my job. I'd complain to anyone that would listen. And one day, Silvio gave me a perspective, and we hear now, change the way you look at a thing, and the thing you're looking at changes, and I understand it. And at the time, I didn't know it was my perspective that was changing.
Right.
But he basically just unresistantly said, okay, I hear you. That's all crap.
Silvio magically does that naturally, I feel like, right?
Yeah, because he's like, he doesn't tell you should do this, and
Right.
why don't you do that? Well, he just points you over there and says, yeah, okay, but did you consider that, you get to wake up when you want, and
Right.
you can see who you want to see and make your own appointments. And I mean, I can go on just on this
I
point,
know, right?
because
We
like,
could
there's
do a
so
whole episode
much.
just on
There's the
Silvio.
law of polarity, and there's like everything has good and bad in it, and it's not just a positive mindset; it's actually law. And I'd love to talk about that with you today.
Yeah,
but
we will for sure.
so anyway, that gave me a different perspective, and it's sometimes we hear things and it gives us hope, and we think everything is going to change, and you might go to a workshop or you see Tony Robbins and you come back. This time I'm going to do it, and then you maybe it lasts for a week. And thankfully, when I heard those words, he directed me towards Think and Grow Rich and Bob Proctor, and I really became obsessed with what I was hearing. So that's all I was listening to. I traded in TV and video games for,
Right.
Reading and watching these mentors of mine speak. And I started to really see the world in that way. And when you hear something and you become aware of how you should be doing it, and then you don't do it, nothing destroys your self-confidence
Right.
and your value the way that does, knowing that you're not doing what you should be doing. So I started to study. Those were the recommendations of Bob Proctor. He said, work on yourself harder than you'll work on anything, and study every single day. So I invited 3 of my friends to come along and get up early and read. We would read, Think and Grow Rich, Signs of Getting Rich, 4 Agreements, all these amazing books.
And this was on the phone.
And this was on the phone. We'd conference each other in. It was, I think it started at 6:30, and then we started to move it up, and it eventually became 5:30. And they were sharing the results that they were getting by being on the call. It's not a book club. We read for 20 minutes.
Yeah, just 4 buddies, just
Yeah.
to, like self-development, self-growth, right?
Yeah, and totally open, having conversations that you wouldn't typically have with people.
Right.
And you start to realize, okay, so I'm not the only weirdo that has
Yeah.
these thoughts or that thinks this way. And, people started to ask if they can jump on this call. And I was like, no, I resisted it. I was, no, I don't want to change the dynamic. We speak so openly. We speak about everything. And then one day the words left my mouth. I did a workshop. I was asked to speak. That led to doing a workshop. And the words left my mouth. If anybody, because I was looking at the audience and I was like, these guys are going to leave and nothing's going to change.
Well, that's because you experienced all of those feelings yourself too. Like you leave so hyped up and then you kind of fall back into your habitual patterns, right?
Yeah. And I think that's what's missing from most of these personal development courses.
Yes.
Right. So
Yes.
I heard myself say, if anybody wants to engage more in this information and wants to join us on our call in the morning, reach out to me, send me an email, and I'll invite you on. And so from there, I think 3 or 4 people joined. And then from those 3 or 4 people, they started to ask if people could join. And again, I was like, no, 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 no. And eventually we had 17 people on the call, and I was like, okay, it's time to go to a Zoom. So anyway, that unfolded the way it should have. I could never have created it myself.
Right.
I don't take credit for any of what was built or what was created. I was just working on myself and inviting other people to kind of join my journey.
Right.
And eventually, COVID hit, and by then, I don't know, we had 100, close to 200 people on the call.
There
And
was, yeah, close to 200 people when I joined.
yeah, and it was, so we read for 20 minutes, and I kind of break down what we've read, because a
Right.
lot of the stuff it's hard to understand.
Right.
And then apply it to our lives, our relationships, our business life, our personal lives.
Right.
And people were getting a lot because it's not me, it's the information. And if you want to take it on, anybody can change. So I went from suffering and struggling to starting to see my results change drastically and quickly.
And I also feel like through that experience and you sharing this information, you were also receiving so much yourself too. And I feel like even with me in my journey, like when I am doing the things that I do with my clients and with my people, yes, you're giving, but I'm always receiving at the end of everything. I've either had like a new awareness of something or I've learned something new. And I feel like that happens when, with your heart, you're like sharing all of this information and you're opening up this space for people to come and learn and heal. And you are also receiving so much in the end. So is it okay if I stop you there and then talk about how I came on the call and what happened
There
with
was like
that?
15 things you just said that I wanted to expand on. Like,
Okay.
like giving and receiving are
Joe,
the
we're gonna be
opposite
here
side.
until next week.
like giving and
Okay.
receiving, opposite side of the same thing,
Yes.
right? Two
Okay.
people, one person teaches, 2 people learn. So yes, absolutely.
Yes. And then another thing that you always said on the call, when the student is ready, the teacher appears, right?
Yeah, and you know what? I do want to say this point before
Yes.
we move on.
Yeah.
I think it's easy to start feeling like an imposter. When
Oh, I went through
when I
that.
was leading these people, there was things in my life that weren't working. There's things in my life that aren't working today.
Right.
And I think that's going to tie into resentment and forgiveness and
Yes.
guilt and everything else. And you have to see yourself for where you're going. If you see yourself through the perception of where you're at or other people or how they see you, and you're afraid of criticism and judgment, which is going to be a lot of as you change and grow,
Right.
you're not going to be able to discover your purpose or help the people you want to help or receive what's meant for you to receive at the time, right?
I couldn't agree more. And it's we make it so complicated and it's so simple. And I say this to my kids every single day when they come to me and said, this person said this. And the first thing I say to them is that true? And they say no. And I said it, and I tell them this, it only becomes true the second you choose to believe it, right? And it's so simple, and I make it so simple for them. But then it becomes so complicated when it becomes us or how we're perceived or how we're viewed or the things that, people are saying about us or whatever the case may be. And we make it more complicated than it actually really is. But it's that simple, really.
Yeah. Well, I think what we need to know about that is that, and I often say we give great advice to other people.
Right.
And it's because we're not emotionally involved
That's right.
with what's happening.
Yeah.
So I can tell you what I see from an intellectual standpoint. You in it, you're on a frequency because of the way you're feeling
Right.
about it. You're so emotionally involved in it that you can't think logically, or your logic is being ruled by your programming.
That's right. We need to
So-
pull out a whiteboard and start doing stick
Yeah,
figure.
watch yourself yeah. That's coming. I think I'm gonna do an overlay on that. So it could at times feel like you're preaching, or that you're not living up to what you're telling other people
Yeah,
to do.
you're not practicing what you're preaching or living in the authenticity of what you're saying.
And that's where the community comes in.
Right.
Because now I can call you out, you can call me out.
Right.
Right. Or you can remind me through your actions and vice versa.
Right.
And when we're willing to grow, we take all that criticism constructively. And
Yes.
I want to change,
Of course.
I want you to point out what I need to know, so we've been conditioned to think a certain way. And at the end of the day, we're meaning makers. Your kids They're
Yeah.
meaning makers. We're all meaning makers. We make stuff up. Everything just is.
Yeah.
And that triggers a lot of people.
It does.
But when you really understand it, it's true. Everything just is. We make it what it is according to our point of view, our perception, the way we see the world, by the way we reason with it.
But this is shared on so many other platforms. Even myself, when I was going through my trauma practitioner training, it's the way that our brain works. Like when something happens, we make a meaning of it to make sense of it through our perception, through our experiences, through our life experiences, through our programming, for it to make sense to fit what we want it to fit. But in reality, it just is.
Yeah.
Right.
And the victims who wish to remain victims are not going to like the sound of that.
Absolutely.
Right. And it's only when, and everybody's playing a victim at some point in the day or some point in their lives. Hero on a Mission is a great book if you want to
Yes.
understand that hero's journey.
That's a great book.
But it starts with a decision. You know, I don't want to be a victim anymore. Victims never win. And it's wanting to, I guess, really embody the information and
Right.
and actually see the world. And then you have to surrender to your ego. You have to surrender to everything
Which
else.
is the hardest part.
It's hugely because it's protecting you,
Right. Yeah.
And we don't know what to do with our anger, so we put it in. And when you understand cause and effect and vibration and attraction and conscious, subconscious mind. If there's one thing anybody listening or viewing can take away, I really urge you to really understand the conscious and the subconscious mind.
Yeah.
Guilt and resentment, anger, that's all a frequency. But it starts with an idea in the conscious mind. A conscious mind is where we have the ability to choose. And we often choose what we've always chosen.
Yes.
And
And
so now
I'm
you have
saying
to
this
choose
too in
differently.
my field, we say it's what is familiar to your nervous system. You constantly choose what's familiar in your nervous system, and it's the exact same information, just said differently.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And everybody's saying the same thing.
Right.
That's what's incredible. From the beginning of time, like you go back to the lessons in the Bible, it's
Right.
all the same stuff.
Yeah.
It's just being said differently. And the question is if you're ready to receive it, if you're ready to, like, I was just sick and tired of my life. And it was like, okay, I get it. You know what? I'm not going to complain anymore.
Right.
And just by stopping that, when you blame and complain, you give up your power to do anything to change your life.
Yep.
And so if I understand I'm where I'm at because of all the choices I've made in the past, where I'm at tomorrow is going to be determined by what I choose today.
Absolutely.
And it's not, and I think people, I've heard the term toxic positivity. And it's
I
not.
love that you actually brought that up.
Yeah, because you might sound like you're gaslighting, or it might sound like you're deflecting responsibility. I take full responsibility for everything I've done. I think we've all done things we're ashamed of, we regret, we wish we had done differently.
Right.
We've hurt people, we've angered people, and he is without sin cast the first stone. If we don't understand, we've got what we got from what we've known up until now.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And for something to change, you got to choose to start, you got to choose differently.
Right.
And people don't get that part,
Yeah.
So I know that all the wrongs I've done is for God to right. It's between me and God.
Absolutely.
I'll be punished, whether it's sleepless nights, whether it's the results in my life, whether it's my bank account statement, whether it's my relationship status, whatever it is, I will face the consequences of my actions.
That's right.
It's not up to you to
Yep.
punish me, because now that's on you because you're acting. So I'm also responsible for my reaction to your action,
Absolutely.
to your wrongdoing. You've unjustly wronged me. And now I'm feeling justified. And I have a whole bunch of people all around me that are going to side with me and say, you're right, you should do this to them. And, and they give sympathy to wrong thinking. But when you understand that, you are choosing a negative idea, which sets up a negative emotion or a negative
Right.
vibration, causes you to take a negative action,
Yep.
and negative action produces a negative result.
Absolutely.
Right? So now I have the choice. Are you kidding me? I have the power to choose. And it's not deflecting. I take full responsibility, but I can't let you now keep me where I'm at. I have a family to raise. I have a business to run.
Right.
I have people to help. I have to focus on where I'm going, and I understand that I'm learning. Like we're all learning to get from where you are to where you want to go is a journey. And if you think
It's a
it's going to be
bumpy road.
a one-way ticket straight
Right.
up to the top,
Yep.
no, it's going to be filled with ups and downs, a lot of lessons you have to learn in order to advance to the next lesson. And a lot of the times we're not willing to take those lessons, take responsibility, take accountability, and move on.
And I feel like that was like a huge part for me too. When before I started the call, I had just had my first two kids back to back, and I had just had Nina.
Yeah.
And I felt really lost in my journey at that time, right? My background was working with children, and that whole time that I was in that field and just in my heart and in my body, I knew that there was more that I wanted to do, right? I didn't go through everything I went through and not do anything with it, right?
Right.
And so through different people, like you said, you opened up the wake up call to this person and this person, and then they started inviting other people. I came on the same way, right? I heard about the wake up call. You got to come on this call. It's so good. It's at 5:30 in the morning. And the first thing that came, are you crazy? 5:30 in the morning. I just had a baby.
Yeah.
She wakes up every hour and a half to 2 hours. And then I'm thinking, well, I'm already awake at that time,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I said, you know what? I'm going to go on this call once. I'm going to see what it's all about. And if I like it, then I'll get on. And so I get on this wake up call and 5:30 in the morning. And I that day I can even see myself exactly where I was sitting in my kitchen. I could see who was on the call, and I was blown away. And not just from the material, but just I remember all of the questions I had about myself in my mind. And I remember like bouncing around the kitchen with the baby. I ended up like, my sister got so mad at me because I ended up putting us on like the hot seat the next episode. But anyways, so through this is actually what I wanted to get to. This is something that I know a lot of people have been asking me. A lot of people have been waiting to hear my part of this, and this is a huge reason why I wanted to have you here, because a lot of people know, my story and what I went through with losing my mom to domestic violence. And if you haven't, you can go on episode 1, 2, and 3 and watch all of that. And the big piece of that journey was my forgiveness piece. Forgiving, I'm going to say it like that until I explain. Forgiving my dad for what he did to my mom, what he did to us, what he did to my family. And I remember coming on the call, just, tunnel vision. Like when people would even say, would you ever think about forgiveness? And it would trigger me. I would get so angry, and I would lash out and I would say, how dare you? Would you forgive your father if he did that? And I was just, I had so much rage, so much resentment. And like you said, I didn't know how to express that, right? And so through being on the call, I feel like it started with me developing so much more self-awareness. And through everything that you taught us, through the conscious mind and the subconscious mind, and our autopilot and our habitual patterns and everything, like all of that beautiful information that you taught us every single morning, the repetition of it, like you said, you go to this workshop and you go to that workshop and you feel good and you took so much from it, and then it dies down. And I feel like that's the power in your call, because there's that repetition that you experience every single morning, and you're kind of learning off of each morning, off of each book, off of each teaching. And I think that's where the power was for me. And the more I started learning about myself, the more I started learning about why I was showing up in the world the way that I was, I started feeling a little bit of like more compassion towards people that were in my life that I was surrounded by. And I think that that's how it started. And forgiving myself for the way that I was showing up, understanding where that was coming from, but also not being a victim in it and making excuses for it, taking full responsibility for where I was and the choices that I was making, that I was keeping myself stuck, which was being in victim, right? Blaming. and not being able to do what I wanted to do or what I needed to do or my purpose because I was staying stuck on a frequency of anger, shame, guilt, resentment, all of those lower frequencies. And as I was going through that and having more compassion towards the people around me, I started softening a little bit. And now instead of seeing, oh, this being judgmental, this person did this and this person did that, I was more curious. Why is this person showing up the way that they are? What's their story? And then I remember you bringing up forgiveness to me. And I was like, Joe, we're not going there. Like, it's not happening. You're like, okay, I'm just planting the seed. Whenever, if you need me, I'm here. You could call me anytime. And I just kept showing up on the call every single morning, showing up, not missing a day, learning, listening, and then contributing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I don't know what happened. And then all of a sudden, that curiosity from myself turned into curiosity of others, and then turned into curiosity about my dad. And not that I'm saying that there's reasons that people should show up a certain way or there's actions that can be excused because of our upbringing, but just to go back to it, it happened. It is what it is. And I just became more curious about what was that story. And I'm trying to,
Yeah. It's hard to condense into.
right. Because it was it was probably the healing journey in that, and the forgiveness piece of that was much harder than my path of going through my trauma. And were you going to say something?
Yeah, so much. But
Yeah. Okay.
continue.
And then I feel like, and I thank you for being there for me through that, because it was really, really hard. And I hated you at the time for it. Not really hated you, but I hated you for bringing me to that. But I knew it's what I needed. And it was more than just forgiveness or forgive yourself, or it was much more than that. Through being on the call, I learned that my definition of forgiveness was unique to me. And for me, forgiveness meant letting my dad off the hook for what he did. Forgiveness to me meant betraying my mom, betraying my siblings, betraying my grandparents, the people who took us in, the people who raised us. It meant betraying all of that, right? Until I started to realize that there are so many different definitions of what forgiveness means. And for me, it became, will I ever forgive my dad for what he did? No. But I learned to forgive the version of himself that he was at that time, that with the choices that he chose to make that morning and the choices before that and after that, right? And that was so healing for me. And I hit rock bottom, one of my rock bottoms, where I didn't know how to navigate that. And I bawled my eyes out, I cried, and a lot came up for me. So I wanted you to know that the power of the call, the power of you sharing those lessons, and the power and the consistency and the repetition of it, I didn't see what was happening as it was happening.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's brought me to this beautiful place where, just like that breath, like I feel lighter. I'm not feeling the rage and resentment. Of course, there are triggers. Of course, there are hard days that come up where I get angry and resentful. And I don't even know if like making peace with it is even the proper way of saying it. I don't really have, a word or a phrase that I can use with it. But this is the biggest reason why I wanted to have you on here, because it wasn't just my forgiveness journey too that you brought me on. It was the reason I'm sitting here today sharing this information, the work that I did. I stepped into my higher power. I stepped into my purpose because of the information that you gave us.
How do you put yourself in different mindsets with different people? How do you shift gears and focus in on or hone in on what they need from you, opposed from the person that you talked to half hour ago?
Geez, Stefan, that's a loaded question.
He gives loaded questions.
What was
Okay.
the last thing you asked?
That it
You
wasn't
said-
just my forgiveness journey that you led me on. It was the reason that I'm sitting here today. The impact that you made on my life, right?
So, I know you don't like this and you get mad at me when I say it, but it's true. A book's not going to change you. A lot of people have read books I've read, and it's the same. I've read books other people have read, and they're somewhere I'm not. Um, it's, that's where I got to really give you a lot of credit. You wanted to receive it. You were willing to work on yourself. You were humble enough to look and say, okay, my way's not working.
Yeah.
And I think over time, I've heard that analogy of the professor holding up a glass of water and he asked the question, how much does this weigh? And, everybody's taking a guess.
You showed us
ounces.
this video on the call, actually.
Well, it's powerful because he says, you know what? Well, what if I hold it for an hour? And what happens if I hold it for 8? What happens if I hold it for a week? And, your arm's going to get numb or whatever. So it's not the weight of the problem.
Right.
It's how long we're holding it for.
Yes.
And unfortunately, a lot of people choose to go through their whole entire life.
Holding the glass of water.
Yeah, and relieving themselves of any. Because listen, it's easier to live in ignorance and fear
Yeah.
than it is to live with knowledge and faith.
Because it's comfortable there, right?
You don't have to do anything
Right.
when you're afraid. And if you're ignorant, you don't.
Yeah, you don't
I
have to
don't
do
know.
nothing.
Right? I don't know.
It's
So-
hard. It was hard work. It still is.
And I remember crying my eyes out with you after certain calls.
Yeah,
Like,
I think you cried with me every single time. we
my
called.
God, the story is just so incredible. And then a lot of the times there's I don't know if I'm cut out for this, but again, it's it's not me. It has nothing to do with me. It's the message, it's the information. And I have to relax
Right.
and just let it flow through me the way you're doing. And I think of the millions of people that have heard your message. If you would have stayed where you were at,
Yeah.
there's maybe one person that woke up and is inventing the cure to cancer.
Yeah.
I don't know, because
Yeah.
it doesn't affect just your happiness. It affects your whole entire life and your results in your business and everything. And so I think for me, the most important thing and understanding the law. So for me to look at you and say, where am I going to get the courage to say to this woman what I think she needs to hear, as opposed to what most people would say is, yeah, oh my God, are you serious? Right? Sympathy to wrong thinking.
You're so strong.
Yeah. So for me to see you, and I think first of all, I have to understand who I am.
Yeah.
Who I am is the same as you, is the same as Stefan, is the same as everyone. Right? We're a spiritual being. We live in a physical body, and we have an intellect. We have the ability to think, and that spirit is what causes you to want more. And it's for expression, greater expression, expansion. It's why you feel like you can do more, why you want to do more, why you want to be better. And a lot of people don't understand that. And they, because our thoughts shut it down and suppress that, we just think we're not capable, and we're frustrated because we know we're capable of more. So there's that whole thing happening. But when I understand that that's who I am, I'm not my name, I'm not my body, I'm not my bank statement, right? I'm not what I did. I am who I say I am from this point forward. And we're all the same. And there's laws that govern everything in the universe.
Yeah.
And they don't discriminate. They don't care if you're right or wrong.
Yep.
They don't care how justified you are, how many people agree with you. And, I read this book called Courage to be Disliked. And at times, like even in your position, in your role now, you have to quiet out the noise.
Yeah.
Understanding that people are coming from a place of ignorance.
Right.
And not ignorance as in you're stupid.
Yeah.
You don't know what you don't know.
Right.
You haven't heard what you need to
They're
hear.
just coming from their level of awareness
Wherever
of
they're
what it's at. Yeah.
right now. But I guess I saw enough in you to know that I could safely say what I wanted to say. And there's a law of non-resistance. I wasn't pushing you.
No.
It was just like what Silvio did for me. Hey, look over here. Consider this.
Yeah.
Consider that. And I think when you understand yourself in that way, that greater understanding of you, your actions, because if we look, we're going to look and say, I don't know why I did that.
Right.
Right? So we can't understand the extent of what your father did.
Right.
But the reality is we've all did things that we can't understand. Like, why the hell would I have said that? Why did I do that?
Right.
And now that starts to build some sort of understanding or have the ability to have compassion.
Right. And the curiosity and learning more about that too.
And to understand he's not who he was.
Right.
And listen, I think there's many people that are going to hear that and be very angry with
Yeah,
us
and triggered
for
and
saying that.
yeah.
Like, what are you kidding? And we're not letting anybody off the hook,
No.
but you can't do what you're doing
Right.
if you hang on to what had happened, and you're maybe not fully healed, but you're getting what you need to be getting right now in your life. And in
Yeah.
the process, you're helping so many people. So when you understand guilt and resentment, they're so closely aligned. Guilt is reflected inward.
Right.
Resentment is outward.
Whew.
I'm resentful towards you for what you did, but it works the exact same way. So now whether I'm holding that resentment or guilt, whether it's I'm holding it towards you or I'm pushing it inward towards me, I am setting up a vibration. And I don't know if you talk about vibration and frequencies on the call.
No, but we're going to now.
Yeah, and you know, I'll admit when I first heard those things, listen, they resonated with me.
Right.
If I'm on a frequency of resentment, I can only get a reality that exists on that frequency.
Right.
If I tune into 680 News or whatever
Yeah.
news station on the radio, I can only get what they're broadcasting. I'm going to hear the news.
Right.
If we're tuned into scarcity, you're going to get scarcity. And we hear this and we think we understand it. And then we push it off and we go about our daily routine. We do the things we've always done. We don't make any changes. You decided to make a change and you started to really understand what that meant. And you, like so many other people that came through the call, myself as well, it was the exact same thing. And that's not to say I have life figured out by any means,
Right. Right.
but I'm righting certain wrongs.
Yeah.
I was given the wrong advice. You know, I grew up with paradigms and programming and beliefs that I didn't choose for myself.
Right.
And those aren't aligned with the essence of who I truly am. I want to have integrity. I want to be truthful all the time.
Right.
I want to be successful. I want to help people. Like there's all these things I want to be, but if you look at my behavior, you'll be like, you're full of shit.
Right. Because it's okay. You're allowed to say bad words.
Yeah. So I now law of sacrifice. You've been rewarded because you were willing to pay the price. I've had people come on the call, get off and be like, Joe, that was life-changing information, but I can't get up that early in the morning.
Right.
Okay, well, you don't get the reward.
Right.
You have to be willing to pay the price. And so often we're not willing to make the sacrifices for our own personal growth, for the journey, for the lessons, for taking responsibility, 100% accountability for everything. And so I think the key for being able to guide people, lead people, see people without judgment, without that criticism. And listen, I was a
Right.
very critical person.
Yeah. Same.
I grew up with a lot of, and it wasn't directed towards me, right? But in our culture,
Yes.
there's a lot of criticism, a lot of
Judgment,
judgment.
yeah.
Okay, where's she going with? I'm going to go.
Exactly.
So, and you start to see that we adopted a lot of these beliefs, and we've talked about what
Yeah.
you don't fix, your kids inherit.
That was a huge wake up call.
And
It's
so
just
now
that was a wake up call for me.
I'm behaving in ways that I'm not happy with.
Mhm.
So, how can I judge you if I understand that?
Right.
Like, so
I also feel like it's important to like, you know, and I talk about this with my clients too, but this is also another way that you shared it about how, you know, not always, but most of the time when we get triggered or angry, it's kind of like a mirror, right?
yeah.
You've talked about this on the call a lot about how other people are going to show us the parts of ourselves that we don't want to look at, right? Which are our shadow parts.
Yeah.
So that was huge for me too. Like when every time I would get triggered by someone or something, or I was so quick to judge or criticize someone else, that I would take that opportunity to pause and reflect, okay, what part of me wanted to judge or criticize that person? What part am I seeing in myself, or what part is that person reflecting?
I think you have to have give yourself a lot of grace. You're going to fail
Yeah.
and you're going to be tested. And for me, so what I've learned is, you know, you don't start on lesson 17.
Right.
You start on lesson 1
Yeah.
and you nail the lesson and you pass it with flying colors
Right.
and you advance, you get to lesson 7 and you're doing pretty good, but then you get stuck and you fall back, you retreat to the old version of you. And I think you have to give yourself grace. You have to understand how it works. And you have to always be looking at things like this is either a win or a lesson.
Yeah.
I understand the laws that I speak about so frequently, and I hear them, and everything that you're saying, I'm like, that's the law. That's the law. I understand them so well because I violated the laws
Right.
so many times. Like I mess up so much that it makes me understand things at a deeper level.
Because there's like the natural consequence, right?
Yeah. So the thing is, you might be caught in a rut. Like I'll go back and sometimes I'll give up the routine. I want abs. I sit down with a personal trainer. He tells me, eat this, do these exercises, come back in 3 months and we'll talk. And I'll be like, dude, I have no abs. So what's going on? He's
Right.
like, well, what have you been doing? I've been eating Twinkies and I've been, sitting on the couch watching
Right.
movies. So the awareness doesn't change anything. It's getting up, going to the gym, and then learning. Okay, my posture isn't great. I'm not breathing the right way. I'm not
Right.
eating the right foods. I have to eliminate that. And the more you do that, the more you can start to refine things, and you're gonna relapse. And the biggest challenge for me has been, how do you continue to grow when there's significant people in your life that maybe because it's all about taking 100% responsibility.
Right.
And here's the thing, it's taking 100% responsibility no matter what. And that's been my biggest test.
Taking
It's okay, I'm taking
100%
100% responsibility,
no
but
matter what.
when are you going to step up and take your responsibility
Right.
for your thing?
Right.
And at some point, there's a point of surrender where, I realize, okay, well, it's still 100% my responsibility.
Yeah.
My reaction to what you just said is still an action,
Yeah.
which garners a consequence. It doesn't matter how justified. So whatever your father did, you could be justified and you could be right. And there could be the whole world behind you saying, yeah, you're right.
You're right.
You're justified for feeling this way. It doesn't alter or change the consequences for what you're holding on to, for how you're thinking, for what you're doing, how you're behaving, how you're speaking to your kids, what you're like, the gift that you're giving to the world.
Right.
And you couldn't have done that without those moments of weakness, without those moments of like, you know what, screw this, I'm not forgiving nothing. Like, how could I even
Oh,
think
yeah,
that?
I was
want to
pissed.
strangle Joel right
Yeah.
now, right?
I was pissed. But as soon as you said it, I was like,
Yeah, but you didn't choose, okay, I'm going to forgive him because I understand this is the way it works, and then you forgave him and that was it.
no, it was a long journey, of course.
And I
right?
think it starts with just even entertaining the idea, or at least opening up. Okay, I don't know enough, or maybe this is worth entertaining. And I think the problem today is we're inundated with, the Instagram posts, and
Yeah.
we're all wise now, right? We all have these. Oh, I walk around like,
We're all gurus.
yeah, like the Dalai Lama. Anger's like drinking poison, expecting the other person to
Right,
die.
right,
And,
right. I feel like parts of that is like just like spiritually bypassing to like avoiding dealing with the root and the inner conflict that's going on inside too.
well, it depends what you do with it.
Right.
And I think everything is supposed to direct us inward. And the problem
Inward,
is, in
exactly.
this world that we're living in, we're always outside.
Yeah.
And it's always the ego. And we're going to use this information. Did you hear what the priest said? Did you hear what the counselor said?
Right.
And it's like, you need to fix this. You're a narcissist.
Yeah.
You're a whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but therapy is for you.
Right.
Right. And I got what I needed to get. I heard what I need to hear. I'm going within me. Why are you going outward to me?
Yes. It's projection.
Projection. And in the meanwhile, you're throwing rocks and stones. So it takes a level of like a high degree of level and high level of understanding
Yeah.
and commitment and
The commitment's huge.
strength
Yeah.
to understand you're not going to be understood. So when I'm watching anything on social media or anywhere really, I think what keeps me grounded and safe
Yeah.
is the knowledge, the understanding, the deep understanding that I have the ability to choose.
Yes.
When you're starting on the personal growth journey, you hear things like, oh, brainwashing and all these things. You know what? At the end of the day, I'm hearing information. Like what I do for my clients in the mortgage world is, here's all the information. Here's what I think you need to know in order to make an informed decision. Now you choose.
Right.
And you have the ability to choose. The problem with social media is that we're watching, like you're listening to me right now.
Yes.
I'm not certified. I'm not a psychotherapist. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not an expert. You could look at my life and say, dude, you're failing in a lot of areas, right? But I've also learned along the way. And I can tell you, when I obey the laws, when I work in harmony with them, I get a positive result. When I violate them, there's no evading, there's no negotiating the consequences of the laws. So I discriminate in a healthy way and say, I want to hear what this person has to say. But and I do the same with my doctor. Okay, yeah, he's wearing the white lab coat. My paradigm tells me I got to listen to everything he says.
Right.
But before I take those pills, I'm going to,
I want to do my own research. I want to look into
yeah.
different,
So,
get a second
I think
opinion or,
I've learned also to trust what resonates with me.
right.
There's our intuition that we don't develop. It sits idle. And I think it's one of our most powerful gifts. It's one of the higher mental faculties. You feel like if you're hearing this right now and it feels good or it feels true, it's because it is.
Right.
If it's feeling like it
Doesn't
not,
resonate. Yeah.
but we don't pick up on those things. And sometimes, is it your ego or is it your higher
I
self?
was just going to talk about that too, because it plays a huge part in it.
And the
Right.
ego wants to look outward, and the ego
Right.
wants to see the social media and, oh, this is going to fix my problem, or
Right.
this is going to fix his problem. Let me go shove it in his face.
Yeah. Let me send this reel over to the person that I'm trying to deliver the message to.
But then you got to look at this, guys, both of you. I want you both to answer this. How do you beat the trust issue? Because see, she put no trust in you at first and then gave you full trust. So how do you even allow someone to gain trust in an otherwise person that they don't even know?
I don't even think you do that on purpose.
I don't. I make myself vulnerable.
Right.
So the vulnerability of sharing.
Wow, that's so powerful that you just said that, because I feel the same way. I get so many new clients and they don't know me, right? And they're coming to me, and people who are coming to you on the call are coming for a specific reason, right? You're not just gonna, have like this beautiful life and you're so optimistic and you're like, let me just join a wake up call. Like I mean, it could be, but I feel like everybody's working on something,
Yeah.
right? And I came on the call, like Stefano had said, not trusting you. I didn't know you. You were just recommended by somebody that I knew. And because you were vulnerable, because you were humble, because you shared your experience, and I also felt like you were very vulnerable. You were raw. You said things how it is. You didn't try and sugarcoat things. You weren't like spiritually bypassing. There was a lot of vulnerability, and that's what made me trust you. And I feel like that with my clients too. When they come in, I feel like people hold you on a pedestal, or you or me or any teacher, and there's certain expectations that they hold of us, right? But when they
You're not
see,
human, and you're not allowed to make
right,
mistakes.
you're not allowed to make
You're not that
mistakes.
powerful.
You're not allowed to be triggered. You're not, you know what I mean? Because if you're holding space for me, you need to be perfect, right? And I feel that when people can see that you're human just as they are, I've just studied this information and I can guide you and lead you, and then you choose what you want to do with that. But I feel like my clients trust me fairly quickly because I'm vulnerable, because I'm human, because I share my real raw human experiences with them, the things that I've gone through, the things that I've done, the way that I used to think, or even still to this day. And I know I'm going to be a different version of me tomorrow, right? And I think that that's so important, because how do you build trust with
and
someone you don't know?
The other thing you do, and I think we both did this, and I think the people that gain our trust do this. You pour into your people. You're always giving.
Right.
You're not worried about what they're thinking of you. You're not worried about how it comes off or how you sound
Yeah.
and what they're, and that is so if you ever get nervous, you're going to get up and speak, or like I've heard speakers where I'm like, okay, this guy's out to get
I know
something
what you're
for
gonna
himself.
say.
Here we go. He's
Yeah.
going to sell me something. Let me get out of here. Like my sales spirit, I'm getting stuff, and I want to throw things, right? And then there's other people that come on, they start talking, and they could say the same words. You can give them both a script, but it's the energy that they're coming
Right.
from.
Yeah.
And I think you said it, humble. Oh my God, it's so easy to remain humble.
Yeah.
When you take responsibility for things, when you understand, hey, I'm not getting away with anything. This is between me and God, right? And although you might be looking at me, judging me, making your assessment, you've never really talked to me, or you don't know what happened. So you see my decisions or the results of my decisions.
Right.
but you don't know what choices and options I had available to me when
Right.
I made them.
Yeah.
I don't know what's gone on with you or why you chose to forgive or why you chose the podcast or why you yelled at your kid at
Yeah.
Walmart. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and you do the people, it's best watching hockey. Everybody becomes an NHL superstar. Why do
Soccer
you
is the
shoot?
worst.
Well, I don't know. Maybe if you were receiving that pass at 90 miles an hour,
Yeah.
you'd understand how he fanned on the
That's
shot.
such a perfect way of putting it too,
So
right? When you're
everybody's judging, everybody's being the,
the
so
expert in everybody else's life, right?
yeah. But if you hear me say, well, I don't know if I could have received that pass, you might trust me a little more because,
Yeah.
you know,
Exactly, because it shows that that you're human. Joe, I want to end by saying that I feel like people who hold space for people to heal and for people to grow, I sometimes feel like we're too humble, where we don't realize the impact that we're making on people's life. I'm going to get emotional. I already feel it coming up. And what I wanted to share with you is that we have these voices or our perception of ourselves and the way that we talk to ourselves, and we all do this. We're all guilty of this. But how I wanted to end this episode is by just expressing my gratitude, because I was in a very dark place and I felt stuck. And I know you always say it wasn't me, it was the information, it was God. You never take credit for it, but you're not allowed to do that this time, okay? And you pulled me out of a very dark place. I know I pulled myself out there, but you were on the other end of that and you helped me out of that. And you showed me that I get to choose a different life. I get to choose a different path, and I get to choose a different feeling based on the work that I choose to do. And I will forever be grateful for you and the journey that you brought me in. And I'm like, wake up call fan forever. It's changed my life. You've changed my life, and you've just given me a new lens to see the world in, and it is the most beautiful and clearest lens I've ever received. So thank you for everything that you've done for me and my family. And thank you for just being you, showing up as your authentic self always. You showed up through your good days, you showed up through your bad days and your shitty days, and you told all of us all of those days. And it made you human, and that was very comforting. So thank you for being here, especially. And I'm so honored that I even got to have this, to have you on, the biggest catalyst to my healing journey. So I love you, Joe. Thank you.
I love you too, Lisa. I want to say this, and this is going to sound, the way it typically does because I have to repay it, and it's not that. But what you need to understand is that you've just done the same for me. It's amazing the circulation,
Yeah.
And Silvio says it all the time. A lot of my friends say it, and you got what you got, and now I'm in a place in my life where you're able to pick me up, and
Yeah.
I think that's, you want to fall in love with humanity and goodness and this information and taking responsibility and being the best version of yourself. That's what you fall in love with, and I thank you for reminding me
Yeah.
of so many lessons, and to not let situations, circumstances, judgments, people, or whatever stop you from doing the good that you can. Because really, it's not about me or you.
Yeah.
It's what somebody can do with it. And I hope and pray that all your listeners, or at least one of them, get something that they can
Right.
take
They will, for sure.
and use in their lives. And that's from the bottom of my heart. And I love you, Lisa. I love your family and
Yeah.
everything that you stand for. So thank you for having me on. You've done more than you know.
Thank you. And so tell the audience, that's the camera right there, where can they find you? Instagram, website?
JoelTrimboli.com. At Joel Trimboli is the handle on Instagram. I believe that's the YouTube. The YouTube's tricky. I still don't understand the handle on YouTube, but
Yeah.
if you search Joel Trimboli wake up call, but at Joel Trimboli or JoelTrimboli.com will get you everywhere you need to get.
I think
I'd
even if
love
you
to see
just
you on.
Google Joe Trimboli, a whole bunch of stuff will pop.
Who knows?
No, don't Google my name either.
Yeah.
Okay. And for me, of course, you can find me on Instagram at This Is Healing Official and on my website at www.thisishealing.ca.